All right, folks, when I look around and I see what's going on while we're supposed to be reviewing, then it becomes obvious to me why the scores end up like they do. All right, question, yes. All right, folks, look at number one. This was on the CBA either last year or the year before at the semester. They love to take something that should be simple. You guys should know how to square a binomial by now. But then they throw a fraction in there and they write it backwards and they try to confuse you. Do not fall for it. You guys should know how to multiply fractions. You should know how to add fractions. The way that I square a binomial is always by using FOIL. You cannot do that in your head. So the first step is going to have a fraction in it. No big deal. 1/5 times 1/5. Top times top, bottom times bottom. Who said 2/10? All right. 1/5 times 1/5. 1 times 1 is 1. 5 times 5 is 25. I'm getting more and more scared for you guys by the second. 1/5 times 4x. Guys, please. 1/5 times 4. If you want 4 to look like a fraction, just put a 1 under it. So what's 1/5 times 4? 4 over 5. And then don't forget the x. Then you're going to get another 4x times 1/5, which will also be 4 over 5x. What do you get on the end here? No. Not 16x either. 16x squared. It is not the same thing. Alright, so now I have 1/25 plus... Folks, stop talking and try these problems. If you don't want to review, then we won't. What's 4/5 plus 4/5? 8/5 x plus 16x squared. You will see one like that, I am afraid, on your CBA. I don't want you to miss it. That should be easy. Chris, when you add fractions, the denominators do not get added. Think about it. Like, let's say you had 1/2 plus 1/2. 1/2 plus 1/2 is not 1/4. It's 2 halves, which equals a whole. When you add fractions, the bottom numbers have to be the same, and they don't change. You add the top numbers. If they're different, you got to get a common denominator. But they won't be different on one like this, because you're multiplying the same. It's going to get the same thing. All right, number 2. Volume of a rectangular prism is length times width times height. What I would suggest you do here, folks, you've got to multiply all 3 of these, but you can't multiply 3 things at once. I would probably multiply the binomial times the binomial first. So if you haven't done that one, this one yet, do that. After you get that amount, then you multiply that whole answer by x. Do that. And again, you got to use FOIL. You cannot do x plus 2 times x minus 3 in your head. You got to FOIL it. Alright, I got x squared minus 3x plus 2x minus 6. Add those like terms up and you get x squared minus x minus 6. Now that's just the length times height. All I've done is this times this. I still have to multiply that by x. Okay, so now let's do this. What's x times x squared? X to the third. What's x times negative x? Negative x squared. What's x times negative 6? Negative 6x. Okay, so that's my volume. Now, again, we're reviewing for CBA. Your CBA, by the way, will be, let's look at the calendar. It will be on December 19th and 20th. Those are pretty much the last 2 normal days of the semester because the 22nd is a half day, and then I think we've got some kind of incentive going on the 21st. So you need to make sure you're ready for the CBA, which will be a major grade, and tomorrow's part 2 for the factoring and solving quadratic equations. Let's keep on going for the CBA. This was on the CBA either last year or the year before. That top one shouldn't be an issue. The bottom one may be a little bit tricky. Try these problems, please. I'm going to pause while you try these. Alright, so if you are working on your CBA and you come across a question that you're kind of like, I have no idea how I'm supposed to solve this. Think about the numbers or in this case, this polynomial in the problem. What are you used to doing to that? Factoring it. That's what you should do. Factor it. Guess what one of the factors is? P plus 4. The other factor is the other dimension. Well, you can divide. We're going to learn how to do that today by long division. But I would just factor this. This factors into 3p and p. That's how you get 3p squared. 20 could be 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 5 and 4. I'm guessing it's going to be 5 and 4 because I'm looking at this dimension. So if I put a 5 here and a 4 here, I'm getting a 5p and a 12p. And yes, that can make positive 7 if this is negative and this is positive. So if this is the width, then what is this? The length. So the length was 3p minus 5. All right, number next. Now, we're dividing 10x squared minus 85x by x. I'm going to show you two different ways to do this. You can only cancel out common factors if they are a factor. That means connected by multiplying. So, look at this binomial. We are dividing 10x squared minus 85x by x. Do both of these have an x in it? Yeah, let's factor it out. What's left then? 10x minus 85 divided by x. This x and this x can cancel. Because what is this x connected by to the next thing? It's connected by multiplying. So this and this can cancel. Can this x cancel? No, because it's connected by subtracting. If it's being added or subtracted, you can't cross it out. But this x and this x you can cross out. So you're left with 10x minus 85. That's one way they might have the answer. Or they might factor this. The only way you can factor that is GCF. I just took out an x because I knew I was dividing by x. But that's not the GCF. What's the GCF here? 5x, and you'll be left with x minus... How many times is 85 divided... What is 85 divided by 5? 17. Divided by x. And again, look at this x right here. Is it connected by everything around it by multiplying? Yeah, it's connected to 5 by multiplying, and it's connected to x minus 17 by multiplying. So can these x's cancel? Yes. So the other way they might have the answer is 5 times x minus 17, which a second ago we just had that as, let's see, hold on. What did I do? Sorry. Oh, it's 2x, I'm sorry. If you take out a 5x, no wonder y'all look confused. It's 2x minus 17 divided by x. And then this x would cancel out and you'd be left with 5 parentheses 2x minus 17. That's one way they might have the answer. Or they might have had it the way we had it a second ago, which was just 10x minus 85. Both of those are the same thing. But the point is the x canceled out with the x that we took out of these two factors. Okay, we will grade homework, so if I forget, somebody better remind me. But let's go ahead and move on to our lesson. Alright, we are looking at dividing polynomials by long division. And I know you are not going to like this at first. Now, this is getting you ready for the CBA. They have had problems like this on the CBA. And a lot of kids get irritated with me teaching you this way because they don't like it. But those same kids would come back to me after the CBA and say, you never told us how to do it like that. And then you get irritated with me either way. So basically, just get over it. You got to learn it. Now, the ones I'm giving you today are going to be rigged. You don't have to solve them by long division, but I'm telling you, you're going to. Because we will get to some problems that aren't rigged, and you have to know how to do long division. So I want to practice with the easy ones before we do the hard ones. Does that make sense? Let's review how long division works, please, because that's what's going to happen in a minute, except with a bunch of algebra-looking stuff. Let's say I was doing 501 divided by 3. Let's just review how we do long division. How many times does 3 go into 5? Once. Now, what do I do here? I multiply. So I'm doing a division problem. Do I have to multiply? Yes. 1 times 3 is 3. Now what do I do? Subtract. 5 minus 3 is 2. What do I do next? Bring down the next number. So keep in mind what we just did. We multiplied, we subtracted, we brought down. 3 goes into 20 6 times. I multiply now. 6 times 3 is 18. Now I subtract and then I bring down. 3 goes into 21 7 times. And what's my remainder? 0. The problems you're going to do today will be rigged to where the remainder is 0. But next week, they will not have a remainder of 0. Alright, well let's try this. X plus 2 is going into 2x squared plus 7x plus 6. Alright, this is the dividend. I'm not sure if you'd ever be asked that, but you never know. The dividend is what is being divided. The divisor is what you are dividing by. Nicole, go ahead and write this down so you won't tell me I'm going too fast when you start writing it when we're almost done. I'm not sure. Sometimes they throw words into the problem, and sometimes if a kid sees a word they've never seen before, it just freaks them out and they just think they can't even do the problem. Okay, now, the way we have done these so far is I told you could rewrite it like this. The dividend is on the top of the fraction and the divisor is on the bottom, and what do we do to this guy up here? We would factor it. I'm not going to let you do it that way today. Could they be solved that way? Yes, but in the future you're not going to be able to solve it that way because they won't have a common factor. So we're going to have to know how to do this. Let's just practice it with nice easy ones first. Does that make sense? Yes, it's not bad, I promise. Now, this is how you start. You look at just the beginning of the binomial, the divisor. And you ask yourselves, how many times will x go into the first part here of the dividend? How many times will x go into 2x squared? Not just 2, 2x. Okay, well, watch how this is how we're going to get the square. Now, remember what we did on dividing? Then you take this and you multiply it. Now, we're going to multiply it by the entire divisor, not just the x. What's 2x times x? 2x squared. We want these to be exactly the same because we don't want any remainder for this part. We want no x squareds left. But I also have to do 2x times plus 2. That's a positive 4x. Now remember in our long division example, what do I do next? I subtract. You want these to disappear. What's 2x squared minus 2x squared? 0x squared. I don't even write that down. What's 7x minus 4x? 3x. What do I do next? Bring down that whole plus 6. Now we start the process over. Now I look at my first part of my divisor. How many times will x go into 3x? Not 3x, just 3. Positive 3 times. What's 3 times x? 3x. And I also have to multiply 3 times the other part of the divisor. What's 3 times positive 2? Positive 6. And then I subtract. What's my remainder here? Nothing. That's the answer right there.
I don't get it at all.
It's regular division except with x's. Alright, let's try another one, number 2. The more you do it, the easier it gets. Just calm down. Alright, x plus 6 is our divisor. our dividend is 2x squared plus 17x plus 30. Okay, so you want to look at the first part of your divisor, the x, and ask yourselves, how many times will x go into 2x squared? 2x times. You want this times this to equal exactly this, because you don't want any x squareds left over. So what times x would give you back 2x squared? 2x. Now you have to take that 2x though and multiply it by the entire divisor. What's 2x times x? 2x squared. That's why I put a 2x up there, because I wanted these to be exactly the same. What's 2x times a plus 6? Plus 12x. Now what do? You subtract. You shouldn't have any x squareds left. What's 17x minus 12x? 5x. And I also need to bring down the plus 30. I'm almost done now. How many times does x go into 5x? Positive 5. What's positive 5 times the entire divisor? What's 5 times x? 5x. What's 5 times plus 6? Plus 30. What's my remainder? 0. There's my answer, 2x plus 5. All right, you try one on your own. Number 3, are you ready? You can do it, folks. I have faith. 4x squared plus 9x plus 5 divided by x plus 1. Okay, so go ahead, Nicole. You want to ask yourself, what would you multiply x by to get 4x squared? 4x. Okay, so then you take that 4x and you multiply it by everything, not just the x, but also the x plus 1. What's 4x times x plus 1? 4x squared plus 4x. This is about to write 45. Now I subtract. You don't want any x squareds left, so the x squareds cancel out. We did that on purpose. But what's 9x minus 4x? 5x. What do I bring down? The plus 5. What do you multiply an x by to make it a 5x? Yeah, x goes into 5x positive 5 times. Now multiply 5 by the whole x plus 1, and guess what you get? 5x plus 5. What's my remainder? Nothing. That's my answer right there. All right, let's kick it up a notch, shall we? All right, 2x squared minus 3x minus 14. Now you got to be careful here because I'm throwing in some minuses instead of pluses. Divided by x plus 2. Shh. Yes. Okay, Damaris. What do you multiply an x by to make it a 2x squared? So I'm going to put a 2x up here. Michael, now we're going to take that 2x and multiply it by all of this. What's 2x times x? No, 2x times x is not 2x. 2x squared. What's 2x times 2? That's 4x. Now, what's the next step? Subtract. Now, please, please, please be careful here. 2x squared minus 2x squared, these cancel, right? But look what happens here. Negative 3x minus 4x. Negative 3x minus 4x. What is that? Negative 7x. And what do I bring down? Minus 14. All right, now, how do I get what? 7? Negative 7? Okay, remember this second step is always subtract. 2x squared minus 2x squared gives us no more x squareds. These cancel. You got to watch your signs, though. This is a negative 3x, and I'm about to subtract a positive 4x. Well, this positive 4x then really becomes a negative. Those are two negatives. That's negative 7x. All right, now, how many times, Damaris, will x go into negative 7x? In other words, what do you multiply x by to make it a negative 7x? Negative 7. So I'm going to put a negative 7 up here. Now, take that negative 7 and multiply it by all of this. What's negative 7 times x? Negative 7x. What's negative 7 times positive 2? Minus 14. These two things are exactly the same. You're going to get a remainder of 0. Negative 7 minus negative 7 is no x's left. Negative 14 minus negative 14 is our remainder is 0. Where are there two positive signs? It's negative 7x minus negative 7x. This negative 7x and positive 7x is 0. Negative 14 minus negative 14. Okay, let's go back up to the negative 3 again. This is a negative 3x, and you are subtracting a 4x from it. Negative 3x minus, okay, 4x is positive, but when you subtract a positive number, what happens to it? It becomes negative. Those are two negatives. All right, let's try another one. 4x squared minus x minus 5 divided by x plus 1. I bet you did. How many times does x go into 4x squared? 4x. What's 4x times all of this? No. What's 4x times x? Yes. That's not what you said. What's 4x times 1? Positive 4x. Okay, now we're about to subtract. Be careful. What's negative x minus 4x? Negative 5x. Bring down the next part. Bring down the minus 5. How many times does x go into negative 5x? Negative 5 times. What's negative 5 times x? Negative 5x. What's negative 5 times 1? Negative 5. Is my remainder a 0? Yes. All right, now we're going to get really tricky here. 2x squared minus 11x minus 40. This time I'm going to divide by x minus 8. So you got to be careful because we're going to be subtracting negatives here. When you subtract a negative, you're really adding a positive.
Every day. Obviously, I don't.
Thank you. Okay, Michael, let's do this one together. How many times does x go into 2x squared? X times what would give me 2x squared? 2x. All right, what is 2x times x? 2x squared. What is 2x times negative 8? Negative 16x. Now here's where you got to be super careful. We are subtracting here, but look what we are doing. We're doing negative 11x minus negative 16x. What is this? This becomes a giant positive 16. So what's a negative 11x and a positive 16x? 5x. And then bring down the minus 40. Now how many times does x go into 5x? Positive 5 times. What's 5 times x? 5x. What's 5 times negative 8? Negative 40. And our remainder here is 0. That's my answer.
I give I did not know that.
All right, folks, let's try this one. X squared minus 16 divided by x plus 4. Last one, and then we're going to focus on reviewing for tomorrow. Okay, now, before we start this one, to do long division, when you're doing a trinomial divided by a binomial, you need to make the inside, the dividend, the inside the house, you need to make it look like a trinomial. Right now, what this really is the difference of two squares. Yes, it would be so much easier to factor this, but we are going to do it by long division. Now, x squared minus 16 is the dividend. I need that to look like a trinomial, so I'm going to force it to look like a trinomial. What's missing there? The x, the b. The x is missing. So, I am going to force a b to be in there. I'm going to put a plus 0x right in the middle of it. Does that change the value? No, because 0 times anything is 0, so it doesn't affect anything. But now we can do the long division. Now, how many times does x go into x squared? X times. What is x times x plus 4? X squared plus 4x. Now, be careful here. What is 0 x's minus 4 x's? Negative 4x. 0 minus 4. That minus sign turns this 4x into a negative 4x. All right, now bring down the minus 16. How many times does x go into negative 4x? Negative 4 times. So negative 4 times x is negative 4x, and sure enough, negative 4 times positive 4 is negative 16, and I don't have any remainder. Or, difference of two squares, this factors into x plus 4, x minus 4. But we're not practicing factoring, we were practicing long division. All right, let's talk about tomorrow's test. Yes, we're going to grade homework, and I'm not going to forget, so nobody get mad if somebody reminds me. Okay, tomorrow is the rest of Chapter 7 test. Chapter 7 test was all about factoring and then eventually solving quadratic functions. So let me just break it down for you what you can expect to see. I will have 5 questions on area and perimeter in terms of x. I don't think we really need to practice that. I think you guys have this, don't you? Finding area and perimeter, you can do that, right? I will give you the formula and all that good stuff. Now, there will be 3 problems on just multiplying using FOIL, like 2x minus 7 squared. And the reason why kids miss this one is because they don't use FOIL. They forget that you've got to write it side by side and FOIL it out there. 4x squared minus 14x minus 14x plus 49. Y'all remember those? First terms. Outside terms, inside terms, last terms. First, outside, inside, last. Okay, there will be 5 questions that just ask you to factor. That's very similar to the test we took last Friday, where you're not solving, you're just factoring. You're taking out the GCF if there is one, and then you factor what's left. And then there will be 7 questions where you have to actually solve. Now, I've had several kids ask me, am I going to make you do quadratic formula, or am I going to let you solve by factoring? And the answer is, I don't care. Whichever way works for you, you pick your favorite way. Quadratic formula is that opposite of b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. And the factoring is where you break it apart into 2 parentheses. Now, I do have some review problems for you. The bulk of the test is over factoring and solving. Factoring and solving. Look at these 2 questions right here. How do you know you're just supposed to factor besides the directions say factor? It doesn't equal anything. You can't solve it even if you wanted to. How do you know you're supposed to solve these even though It equals something. What does the factoring look like? Oh my gosh. Factoring is when you take something like this and you break it apart into two factors. The guessing and checking stuff. Now look at 5, 6, and 7. 5 is ready to go because it's already all together on one side. But look at number 6. You can't use quadratic formula or factoring until everything is on the same side of the equation and it's set equal to 0. So what would I have to do with number 6 before I can even start? Yeah, you want to move this 16 over and it's going to become a negative 16. Look at number 7. Do I want to move the 9x squared or the 25? The 25. If you're going to factor for sure, you want the x squared term to be positive. All right, try these problems.